Hi everyone, and welcome back to our second week of vocabulary. As you can see on your screen, it's going to be laid out the exact same way as week one. We want to keep things simple so that you know where you're looking and what you're looking at. The 5 root words that we're going to do this week are man or manu, mega, octa or octo, ped, and pond. Now I do want to address really quickly man, manu, and octa, octo. You'll notice that both of those have alternate spellings. The reality is English is a really old language and it has evolved over many years with influences from many different languages. What this difference really is whether or not it's a Greek base or a Latin base. And you just have to be comfortable with the fact that you may or may not see those vowels. And those vowels tend to change based on what letters come after it. And we'll talk about it a little bit more as we do each root word. First up, we have man or manu, meaning hand. Now, again, we'll see that sometimes that U is included, sometimes it's not. It's just a tip to keep you aware for the spelling. Now, remember, we talked last week that there are 3 different levels of words. The dash level or the dot level words tend to be the most frequently used and the easiest to remember. The star level words are going to be a little bit trickier. They may be harder to remember, harder to spell, less frequently used. And the exclamation mark level words are going to be words that you won't run into every single day. Those tend to be our more kick-butt nerd words. All right, now first up, let's start with manual. Manual means done with the hands. Many of your parents work in manual jobs. These are going to be people like mechanics who are putting things together. These are going to be people who work in factories who are physically picking up pieces and putting them on top of other ones and assembling things. Now, the star level word here is manager. A manager, as many of you know, because many of your parents are managers, are going to be the people in charge, usually in a work setting. Now, manager is not an uncommon word, but it's a star level word because you'll notice person in charge does not have hand anywhere inside that definition. Over time, the meaning of words can evolve and change, and this is one of them where we define it much more clearly now than it used to be. When the word manager was initially being used, it was a matter of who does that physical movement, that physical action better. The people who did it better were promoted. Now our economy is a little different and managers aren't always physically doing things. So just be aware that even though hand isn't in there, we still have that root man. The exclamation mark level word here is manuscript, written by hand rather than typed. Your notebook is a manuscript. You have written in it by hand. You didn't get on a computer and type it up. Now, obviously, 100 years ago, everything was a manuscript. There was no such thing as typing it on a computer. But when the first printing press was invented, all of a sudden everything changed. So that was when the difference between a manuscript and a typed item became really important. Down here you'll see the example sentence. We contacted the manager at the store. I hope they were contacting for something good, though we all know that that's not always the reality. Mega! Mega means large. Now let's start down here at the dash level word. A mega store is exactly what you think it is. It is a large mega store. That easy, right? I like when those words break down just like that so you know exactly what they're supposed to mean. Star level word, we have megaphone. Megaphones are those cone-shaped devices that sometimes you'll see people using outside, especially like in the car rider line at school, or sometimes PE coaches will use them when they're trying to get everybody's attention across a field, and it makes their voice very large or very loud. Megabyte, this is a computer term. It's not something that was really used 20 years ago. That term didn't even exist, but now we use that to represent 1 million bytes or bits of information. This 2 to the 20th right here, computers use a different language to communicate. It's called binary, and that is the measurement of 1 megabyte in binary. Just fun fact for the day. Our example sentence down here, the cheerleaders used a megaphone to make their voices louder. Sure, we've all had moments where we're like, I can't hear you. Megaphone can definitely help with that issue. Octo or octa. Now notice again, you've got two different vowel options here. And a lot of times which vowel is being used has a lot to do with what letters follow after it. So, and I do want to address one quick thing before I jump into these example words. I know a lot of you are like, oh, octo, October. Yes, but no, and here's why. So we know that in our calendar, it's the 10th month. Obviously, 8 and 10 are not quite the same thing. Ancient Romans used a different calendar than we use today, and October was the 8th month in their calendar. So while technically, yes, the word October derives from this number 8, on the quiz, I am not going to accept October as an answer. Why? Because in our calendar, it is not the 8th month. So if you tell me October is your example word, you're not showing me that you understand that octo means 8. Now, if you lived in ancient Rome, October would be a totally valid answer. But for the sake of 2018 and beyond, we're not going to accept that one. So let's jump into these example words real quick. Octagon, you know this one already. It is a figure with 8 straight sides and angles. A stop sign is an octagon. You see them all over the place. So, octopus. Before you write down the definition of octopus, I do want to make clear you don't have to write down my example definition, but I was really excited because this is a super nerdy explanation. An octopus is technically a cephalopod mollusk. Now, cephalopod mollusk is a scientific way of describing what an octopus actually is. Mollusk has to do with the fact that it's really soft and squishy, and cephalopod has to do with its legs and the fact that it has a beak and that its body structure. But the important part of this is that an octopus has 8 arms with suckers on them. That's really the part you need to focus on there. Of course, you already know what an octopus is. But, and you'll notice that octagon has an A, octopus has an O. Please pay attention to your spelling, because I find it really frustrating when I get quizzes with things like that misspelled. Hint, hint. Octad! Down here is our star level word. Octad is a group or set of 8. It could be 8 anything. It could be people, it could be pencils, as long as it's a group of 8. Down here we have our example sentence. The stop sign is in the shape of an octagon. Stop sign is in the shape of an octagon. Ped means foot, so ped being the root, foot being the definition. Our example words right here. Let's start with pedal. Pedal is a foot-operated lever to control a vehicle or another mechanism. You use pedals to move your bike, no big deal. Centipede. You are familiar, I'm sure, with the gross, creepy crawliness of a centipede. It's a 100-legged critter. It's kind of like a worm. It slithers. It's really gross. I don't like them. So centi actually means 100, and ped means foot. So centipede literally means 100 feet, which is a really easy way to remember that. Up here we have pedestrian as our exclamation mark level word. Now, I know that you've heard the word pedestrian before. You know what a pedestrian is. A pedestrian is simply somebody who's walking either alongside the road or across the road, somebody who's walking to travel. But I put it up as an exclamation mark level word, A, because people misspell it all the time. And it's not something that you really need to know how to spell at your age. I'm not super worried about it. But that being said, now we've talked about it, an example sentence down here, pedestrians should cross the street in the sidewalk. Pond means weight. Pond means weight. All right, so to ponder is to consider something really deeply. Now, when you're pondering something, you're not going to ponder, what am I going to eat for lunch today? Like, that doesn't really matter. It's not a super big deal. It's not really heavy to think about. You're going to ponder really serious, big topics like, what is the meaning of life? What do I want to do when I grow up? How do I make my family proud? These are going to be like much bigger things that you need to think about, much more important things that may or may not have a right answer. So you're going to really think very deeply and seriously about it, and it's going to have a lot of emotional weight. The star level word over here is to correspond, to communicate by written word. If you had a pen pal when you were younger, that would be a correspondence. When I write emails to your parents, I am corresponding with them. exclamation mark level word down here, preponderance. And it's just a really smart way of saying their numbers are larger and heavier than yours. So like if you go to a meeting and there's people with two different opinions and one side has an incredibly large number of people and your side has like nobody, and you just want to express that, well, they're just trying to have more people than you and they're trying to show off, you could say, they just showed up with a preponderance of people today. They don't actually have anything important to say. And suddenly, you sound much more important and smart. Down here are example sentences. He pondered the thought of moving to a new town carefully. Now, remember that on Friday, we're going to have a quiz on these words. Make sure you study. Make sure you're paying attention to the spelling of some of these example words because they can get a little tricky. If you have any questions, as always, please let me know. If you are looking for videos from the past weeks, they are available on my YouTube channel, teachereberle@gmail.com. You can click here to subscribe or click to look at the rest of the playlist. Have a good week!